Happy Friday, guys. Today we're going to read the last chapter in Shadows at Jamestown. Hopefully you're all caught up and you listened to chapters 24 and 25, and now this is 26. So they figured out the bad guy was Marcus, and so chapter 26, they're just going to wrap it all up. Okay, so it says their parents came early the next morning. It was all that Derek could do to talk their mom out of driving over the night before when he had called to share what had happened at the glass house. Even though Sam knew they hadn't done anything wrong, his parents knew he and Derek had a knack for getting into trouble, and they did worry. Sam preferred to think they had a knack for solving mysteries, but he supposed it was just a matter of perspective. "What's the matter?" he asked Derek as they finished packing up their clothes and sleeping bags in the dorm room. "You're not still thinking about Grace, are you?" "Maybe," said Derek glumly. Sam tried not to laugh. He wasn't sure how Derek had gotten such a big crush on someone so much older than him in the first place. But it was pretty funny. At least she didn't turn out to be a criminal. I know. And Toby's a great guy, don't you think? "Yeah," said Derek, shrugging. "It's just a lot to take in." "Well, I'll agree with that," said Sam. "I can't believe Marcus turned out to be so crazy." Derek laughed. "He was like that mad scientist in the movies. Wait, what was his name?" "Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde." "Yeah, that one. It just goes to show you never can tell." Sam's phone buzzed. It was a text from Caitlin. "I'm outside. Come down." "Let's go," said Sam, hauling his bag to the door. "There they are!" exclaimed their mom, who was standing next to the steps with Dad, Caitlin, and her parents. She smothered them both in a big hug. "Another quiet week at camp, huh, boys?" said Dad, his eyebrows raised suspiciously. "You know how it is, Dad," said Derek, grinning. "I do," Dad answered. "That's what always worries me." Sam smiled as he saw Toby, Grace, and Professor Evenshade walking toward them. The professor had said he wanted to speak to their parents before they left. Sam was happy to have another grown-up explain the situation. "Hello, everyone," the professor greeted them. "Hey, Doc," answered Derek. "Thank you so much for calling," Mom said to the professor. Sam's eyes widened with surprise. He hadn't known the professor had called Mom and Dad directly, although it made sense that he would. "It's not a problem at all," said the professor. "Once again, I need to be thanking you and my young friends here." Sam grinned up at his parents. It felt good to have the professor back up their story. Mom and Dad trusted him. "That's good to hear," answered Mr. Murphy, his arm around Caitlin's shoulder. Sam was pretty sure he and Derek were on Mr. Murphy's good side, since he'd been part of their adventure up in the Blue Ridge Mountains at Swannanoa, but he was still pretty protective of Caitlin. "Your kids did a great job this week," said Toby. Grace gave Derek a wink, and Sam thought he noticed his brother's face reddening once more. "Did you learn anything more about how Marcus was switching out the artifacts?" asked Caitlin. "Yes, I think we've gotten to the bottom of most of it," said the professor. "It seems that Marcus had a contact he was meeting with secretly. The contact would take the real items that had been uncovered and sell them, while Marcus would make a fake to take its place. The authorities are still working on tracking this man down, but Marcus has provided a name, so it should just be a matter of time." "I knew it," said Derek. "That was him we saw in the shadows of the old church that night." The professor nodded. "I wish you would have told me about that right away, kids. Keeping that kind of information to yourselves made the situation much more dangerous." Sam gave Derek an "I told you so" glance. "We've been working on that with them, Professor," said Mom. Professor Evenshade chuckled. "No doubt. Well, thank goodness it wasn't any worse than it was. Your injuries notwithstanding, of course, Grace." "I think I'll be okay, Doc," answered Grace. "It's just bruised." Oh, and guess what? Caitlin exclaimed, turning to her parents. Grace and Toby are getting married. Oh, well, congratulations, Mrs. Murphy responded. Thanks, Grace said. Doc's letting us work with Mariana to mold our rings in the kiln. It will be our own special memory from Jamestown. Another secret that might have been communicated better, I guess, admitted Toby. So, Marcus made the reproductions down at the glass house in the kiln? Asked Sam. Apparently, it was a hidden talent of his, answered the professor. He was able to use his extensive knowledge of the period to recreate the items flawlessly. Until they were analyzed at the Smithsonian, that is, added Toby. Yes, that seems to be the one thing Marcus didn't anticipate, said the professor. Patrick sent one of the reproductions to the Smithsonian, and of course it failed their analysis. There was one more thing he didn't anticipate, said Sam. What's that, Sam? Asked the professor. Us. Everyone laughed, releasing some of the tension that had been building up for a long time. Sam pulled out his phone and showed the picture of his vase to the professor. He apologized for breaking the rules, but the professor seemed to be happy for one more piece of evidence that proved items had been tampered with. I'm headed back up to Washington tomorrow to get things straightened out. Needless to say, it should be a much easier discussion than my last trip. Speaking of trips, said Dad, I think it's time for us to head back home. I'm sorry that this week of field school didn't work out exactly as you planned, said the professor. But I'm glad you kids were here. Thanks for inviting us, said Caitlin. I will definitely not forget it, said Derek. The professor smiled. I've said this to the three of you before, but I'll say it once more. I have a feeling we will be crossing paths again. You guys could make some great archaeologists someday, said Toby. Thanks, said Derek. He waved at Grace. Good luck uncovering more history. As they followed their parents to the parking lot along the brick sidewalk, the historic college buildings all around them, Sam wondered if they hadn't already started making their own history. Uncovering history was a lot like solving a mystery. You never know where the twists and turns will lead you, or when one small step could reveal something spectacular. He couldn't wait to see what would happen next.